if the greatest conspiracy theory of the last 70 years was actually the ultimate success story of American technological dominance and strategic secrecy?
That's pretty much exactly what the documents reveal. Once you dig past all the alien myths and the decades of speculation about flying saucers.
So today, we are diving deep into the true history of Area 51. For so long, people just knew it as this black spot on the map.
A place the government officially calls, and this is almost funny, Homey Airport or Groom Lake.
Right, an open training range. But we know better now, and that's all thanks to some crucial declassified history from the CIA.
This remote spot, picked up by the CIA and the Air Force way back in 1955, it was never about just routine training. It was, and really it still is, the nation's technological crucible.
It's the place where the U.S. has developed and tested the most experimental, truly world-changing aircraft in history.
I know.
And our mission for this deep dive is to cut right through that noise and get to the documented history of Area 51. We're going to focus on how this intense, really absolute government secrecy was considered essential to hitting these critical national security goals.
We're talking about the U-2 spy plane, the Mach 3 OXCART, and then, of course, the F-117 stealth fighter.
It's a story of vital, necessary secrecy that gave the U.S. an edge when it mattered most.
And it all started back in '55 with Project Aquatone. That was the code name for the covert development of the Lockheed U-2.
The spy plane.
Right.
Right.
And the need for secrecy was paramount from day one. You just couldn't test an aircraft like that at public military base. The Soviets would have known about it immediately.
And you have the lead designer, the legendary Kelly Johnson, who has to convince all these top-tier engineers and pilots to move out to the middle of the Nevada desert.
His solution was basically brilliant marketing.
He called it Paradise Ranch.
He did. Which everyone then just shortened to the ranch. The CIA even admitted later that he did it on purpose, just to encourage people to move to this, facility in the middle of nowhere.
That's some next-level HR right there.
It really is. And the engineering itself was just a monumental effort. The U-2 was designed to fly above 70,000 feet.
Which was way higher than Soviet radar could effectively track at the time, right?
Oh, completely. And to keep that operational secrecy, they used dense code words for everything. Pilots were never called pilots, they were drivers.
And the planes themselves.
Just articles.
And you can see how much they prioritized protecting the technology when you look at the design. Think about this. If the engine flamed out at 70,000 feet,
which was a real possibility,
they engineered the U-2 to be able to glide for an incredible 244 nautical miles from that altitude. That's not just planning for failure, that's planning to save the asset.
But that extreme altitude is exactly what created this huge unintended consequence that we are still living with today.
The UFO myth?
The UFO myth.
Okay, so let's get into this because it's fascinating. In the 50s, you have commercial airliners flying at, 20,000 feet? Maybe 25,000 on a good day.
Right. And suddenly you have people seeing this silver U-2 at 60 or 70,000 feet, catching the sunlight at dawn or dusk. It would have looked completely alien.
Moving in ways no known aircraft could.
And the public sees this shiny high-speed object, and boom, the UFO phenomenon just explodes across the country.
Mm-hmm.
The declassified papers on this are staggering.
It's something like, more than half of all UFO reports from that time?
More than half. Between the U-2 and its successor, the A-12 OXCART, they accounted for over half of all UFO reports from the 50s, straight into the 60s.
So the Air Force starts Project Blue Book to investigate all these sightings.
And they could debunk most of them pretty easily. They had the flight logs, they knew what it was.
But they couldn't say anything.
They were strictly forbidden. They could not reveal the U-2 or the A-12 as the source. It was a national security classification.
So they made a choice.
A strategic choice, yeah. Manage the real threat, the Soviet Union, even if that meant letting the public believe in flying saucers for a few decades. Protecting the U-2's mission was just more important.
But then, of course, the U-2 eventually became vulnerable. The Gary Powers incident in 1960, when he was shot down, that proved it.
Exactly. And that meant they needed a replacement. Something faster, something higher.
And that brings us to Project OXCART.
Established in 1959 with the A-12 aircraft. If the U-2 flew high, the A-12 was designed to be almost untouchable. We're talking Mach 3.0, cruising above 90,000 feet.
This is where Kelly Johnson's Skunkworks team really started pioneering what we now think of as stealth technology.
For sure. Just surviving at Mach 3 was a huge challenge. The heat is incredible. They had to use titanium, which was extremely hard to work with back then.
But it wasn't just about speed, was it? It was about not being seen.
Right. They blended that speed with early stealth. They used unique shapes, special fuel additives that could absorb radar waves, even non-metallic parts. The goal was a radar cross-section, or RCS, of less than 10 square meters.
Which for that era was just, it was almost like magic.
It was physics-defying for 1960,
Hmm.
and to support this plane, the base itself, the ranch, had to get a major upgrade.
That's when the big fuel farm was built.
A huge one. A permanent tank farm with a capacity of 1.3 million gallons.
And that was just for the A-12 special fuel.
Just for the JP7 fuel. It's a unique kerosene with a really high flash point, so it wouldn't ignite from the heat at Mach 3. This kind of major construction happening around 1960 is when the site officially got the name we all know today.
Area 51.
Area 51.
I want to talk about the blip scan ratio for a second, because the way the A-12's speed-defeated radar is just brilliant.
It's so clever because it uses human limitations against the operator. See, an early radar screen would only refresh or scan maybe once every 10 or 12 seconds.
And the A-12 is moving at nearly a mile every 2 seconds.
So by the time the radar sweeps around again, the plane is gone from that patch of sky. It just appears as a single fleeting blip. The operator on the ground literally can't process it, can't track it, can't lock on. The plane outruns the human brain.
But the base wasn't just for building our own tech. It was critical for analyzing the enemy's tech, too.
Oh, absolutely. And this had a direct life-or-death impact for American pilots. You can draw a straight line from the testing at Groom Lake to the success of the Navy's Top Gun school.
You're talking about Project Habdonut.
Exactly. The Foreign Tech Exploitation Program.
Yeah.
In 1968, they got their hands on an Iraqi MiG-21 that a defector flew over, a massive intelligence win called Operation Diamond.
And they brought it straight to Groom Lake.
Straight there. Ran it through rigorous joint Air Force and Navy tests, simulating dogfights against our own planes.
And what was the verdict?
It was sobering. The report concluded that our F-4 Phantom and their MiG-21 were, quote, evenly matched.
Wow. So our technological edge was basically gone.
It had eroded. But the testing found the MiG's weakness. It had poor turning ability at lower speeds.
That is pure gold for a pilot.
It was immediately fed to the brand new Top Gun school. It gave U.S. pilots a real, actionable tactic to win. This whole program was so secret that the airspace over the range was marked red square on maps.
An unbelievable advantage. And that push for dominance, it just kept evolving, leading to the first real stealth fighter.
The F-117 Nighthawk. Of course, its home for testing was Area 51. The first prototype flew there on June 18, 1981.
And the security measures around the F-117 were even more extreme, weren't they?
They were just unparalleled. After test flights, they wouldn't just hide the F-117s, they would disassemble them.
Take them apart.
Completely. Defuel them, cradle the parts, and then load them onto C-5 cargo planes to be flown back to Lockheed, all under the cover of total darkness.
The cost and risk of doing that after every single test flight.
It tells you everything. It shows you that the government knew this technology was maybe the single most vital national security asset they had.
But that level of secrecy, that intensity, it came with a real-world cost, a tragic one that eventually came to light.
It did. In 1994, some former civilian contractors and their widows filed a lawsuit. They alleged they had suffered severe injuries, even death, from exposure to toxic materials.
Things like dioxin, trichloroethylene.
Nasty stuff. They said it was being burned in open pits out of Groom Lake.
So you have U.S. citizens, contractors claiming they were harmed, and they're using the courts to try and get justice. This must have created a huge dilemma for the government.
And the government's response was swift and absolute. In 1995, President Bill Clinton issued a determination. He invoked what's called the state secrets privilege.
Which basically exempted Area 51 from environmental disclosure laws.
Exactly. The justification was that any disclosures would, quote, reveal military operational capabilities. So because the plaintiffs couldn't get any evidence.
Their lawsuit was dismissed.
That's right. The courts decided that protecting military secrets superseded the legal process for evidence.
And that fight for secrecy, it's still going on, even in our digital age, with satellites everywhere.
The game just moved. We know for a fact that commercial satellite images of the nearby Tonopah test range have been manipulated, edited to obscure classified aircraft.
And beyond that, the images of the whole region are controlled, aren't they?
They fall under U.S. export control, ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations.
So ITAR isn't just about shipping missile parts, it's about shipping information, even a satellite photo.
Precisely. It makes getting high-resolution, unedited feeds of those areas nearly impossible for the public. The government is still actively protecting that technological lead, both on the ground and in the data stream.
So if we pull it all together, what we've learned is Area 51 isn't really a myth factory. It's this critical national asset. Its secrecy allowed the U.S. to build and maintain a technological edge.
And counter false narratives. This is maybe the most important takeaway. Beyond all the cool planes, the intel from the U-2 allowed President Eisenhower to resist huge pressure to build more missiles.
Because of the so-called missile gap with the Soviets.
Which was mostly Soviet propaganda.
Yeah.
Eisenhower had the U-2 photos. He had the proof that their capabilities were massively exaggerated.
We knew the truth.
And by keeping the source of that truth a secret, he could calmly expose the missile gap for what it was. That single act of strategic secrecy prevented a massively expensive and destabilizing arms race in the late 50s.
It's an incredible example of how secrecy, used correctly, can actually de-escalate a situation.
It really is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with one final thought. It's about that constant cycle of technology getting leapfrogged. You know, the U-2 was designed to last 2 years, but it served for decades.
But then you have Project Aquiline, a $33 million drone program from the 60s that was just canceled in 1971 because satellites could already do the job better.
So given that constant expensive cycle where one secret project makes another one obsolete almost overnight,
what kind of project costing hundreds of millions, maybe billions of dollars today, is the military ready to scrap right now? Because an even more advanced, even more secret, maybe space-based system has already made it pointless.
that's the real legacy of the strategic secrecy born at Area 51.